Ty, before I say welcome back, I want you to tell me what the best thing in life is.
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of the women.
Welcome back! Ty and that guy, John Wesley Chatham. This is my handsome co-host, Ty Franck. And you could tell from our intro, today we're going to be talking about Conan. I feel like I watched Conan before we started this podcast, and I feel like my testosterone is just flowing.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that movie's all testosterone, baby.
Conan will definitely make your balls drop.
It will make your balls drop. But so I guess we'll just get right into it. My initial thought, and I've been wanting to talk to you about this, my initial thought of watching Conan. So I went through a sword and sandal phase as a kid. Like, I went and watched, if it had the cover with the guy with the sword, it's like the kind of knockoff of the Star Wars where they're holding the sword and the people are hanging off of them and everything. I would rent it. I would just go down the line.
That was the Conan poster.
That was the Conan poster.
Conan and the girl hanging on his leg. It was exactly like the Star Wars poster.
Right. Yeah. So, but okay. Now think about this. There was the Star Wars poster like that.
Yep.
Conan's poster like that. And then every derivative of Conan out there. Because I don't know if you remember, but there was an explosion of these type of movies.
I've seen them all. I've seen every Conan ripoff.
All right.
Yeah. We were talking about Sword and the Sorcerer earlier. I've seen Sword and the Sorcerer like 4 times.
So I went down and I would go down the aisle, and if it had that poster, it's like I would rent it and watch it. And I watched them all.
And there were so many that were so bad. They were so bad.
Another level bad.
Yeah.
Another level bad. So what became apparent by this rewatch of Conan is a cut above the other ones. And the reason why is that Conan has a contained philosophy within its world. It reminds me of Dune. Right, there's like a philosophy, there's a religion that people, and it's well thought out, well orchestrated, well written, and well developed for what it is. And
yeah, I mean, it was written by Oliver Stone.
I thought it was. Didn't John Milius take and rewrite the whole thing?
So Oliver Stone wrote the original script, and then John Milius did a pass on it, and John Milius directed it. So you got a fantastic writer working with a fantastic writer-director. Yeah, it's so much smarter than the ripoff versions. It's so smart compared to all of them.
So my understanding was Oliver Stone originally took the first run, and it was a dystopian future.
Yeah,
and they were fighting against mutants and everything like that. And then Milius came in and completely changed it and kind of set it in antiquity, kind of Roman, ancient, kind of barbarian times. Now, do these kind of exist in a parallel universe in a way, or are they like Kroll, right? Like Kroll is where magic is real and they have swords and ride horses, but they also have laser guns. Like, is this like a parallel universe, or is this like take place in some real history?
I mean, the original stories, the Hyperborean Chronicles, I think it is implied that is an ancient history of our world, but obviously it includes things like magic and that kind of stuff. It's not the sort of sword and technology like Kroll was, or what was the other one? Yor the Hunter from the Future was that sort of sword and technology mix. Conan's not that. Conan is like ancient times, ancient weapons, but magic also works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And I guess we'll probably... Joseph, do we have a top 5 today? It'll probably be like the top 5 sword and sandals.
Yeah, that's exact. Well, sword and sorcery films. Yes.
Nice. Okay, great. Because I won't go into it here, but we should talk about Milius. I think he's a really important component to this. We should talk about him a little bit. What are your thoughts on Milius?
I love Milius. I think he was a crazy person in the sense that he was volatile and weird and could be dangerous, probably incredibly hard to work with, but was a genius filmmaker. And I think, and also I think people don't give him enough respect for how good a writer he was.
God almighty. But IMDb him. Yeah. And what he's written.
He was a great writer. He was an even better director. There are a lot of stories about how hard he was to work with, and he would the famous story, I don't know how much truth there is to this, but their famous story of him showing up to a meeting with a producer that he was arguing with and putting a gun on the table. I mean, that's if that's true. And even if it's not true, he was a guy who had the kind of reputation that when that story got passed around, people immediately believed it. I mean, if somebody said, oh, Steven Spielberg went to a meeting to put a gun on a table, everybody'd be like, no, that never happened. But when people told that story about Milius, everybody's like, oh, yeah, I totally believe that. So, I mean, he was just that kind of guy.
Yeah, I have an interesting theory about Milius and that kind of whole thing. I do think when somebody is as powerful of a storyteller as Milius and somebody that understands story, they can kind of create their own legend a little bit. Also, too, like what gets rewarded in Hollywood sometimes, is like sometimes bad behavior gets rewarded, and it gets rewarded by attention. It gets rewarded by you talk about him putting a gun on the table. There's the story of Scorsese doing cocaine all night, and somebody was going to cut his film, and he went and got a gun, and he was going to go to their house, and they stopped him. And I'm like, Scorsese might have done that, but this is also like, these are, poets. These are really like, this is romanticized. Like, was Scorsese going to go shoot him? No, but it was probably like the exhilaration of the story. And I think in some ways, because Milius, he was born in Missouri, but he grew up in Bel Air. He grew up with money, and he was, surfer and hung out with his kids. And I think there's a little bit of like him being bored with his existence and his group of friends, and kind of creating he was a masterful storyteller and kind of creating the legend of Milius.
Yeah, the
self-mythologizing. And I think that and I think with like Spielberg and Lucas and everything in the early days, it was almost like it was entertaining for them. Like who Milius was entertaining. And like he would, like he said, he was to the right of Attila the Hun, and he was like obsessed with these guns, and he would say these outrageous, shocking things. And what it did is it was fun and entertaining to people if they understood him and knew him. Because I don't think Lucas and Spielberg would hang out with somebody that would really would be a threat to murder an executive, at a meeting. And I think that what ended up happening is that he became a victim of his own creation. And I think later he kind of came out about that, because he did say like later in life, I'm not really as right as everybody thinks it is. I just like to I like to go against the grain. That's interesting to me. And like if I'm in an environment where everybody's just patting each other, saying the same things, I always kind of go against that grain. So I think that whole thing fascinates me, because he created this mythology about himself, because he's such a powerful storyteller. And then at the end of the day, when people started taking that seriously, it didn't do well for, and now this doesn't discount he's probably been difficult to work with. He doesn't compromise. He really believes in like this integrity, and that's kind of a separate thing, right? But this kind of outrageous thing that he created is fun and entertaining to watch and hear about, but I don't necessarily know like how much truth is in it.
Yeah. And we don't know. Yeah. But that was my point, is I don't know if that story is true or not. What is true is that when people told the story, other people believed it.
Well, I actually think that story probably is true. Yeah. But I think that story was true because he enjoyed the reaction that the producer probably gave him, and he probably enjoyed.
You do that shit now, you're going to prison.
Oh, you're going to prison. This was a different time in the 80s.
Man. Everybody was super coked up. You could get away with some shit.
Bad behavior was rewarded in the 70s and 80s. It made it, people had a fear. Well, actors in general have a fear of not being interesting or not being enough. So they create these legends within themselves. But then when the morality shifts and when the coach shifts and it's like, and you're standing on the wrong side of the Overton window, then then you're going to be in real trouble. It's like, wait a minute, that's a dick thing to do. And it's always been a dick thing to do. But now it's like, we are now aware that that's a dick thing to do.
Yeah. Well, the reality is there's no one in this world that you can trust. Not men, not women, not beasts. This you can trust.
Ty, what do you take the riddle of the steel to mean?
Well, there's many answers to what the riddle of steel actually is. Thulsa Doom's answer is that it's a paradox, that steel isn't strong. It's not stronger than the flesh that wields it. Conan's father's version of it is that steel is the only thing in life that you can count on. Yeah, so there's that's the fun thing about the movie is it doesn't come down with one answer of what the riddle of steel is.
You are a Conan historian because that's what, because I watched it just really trying to understand what it was saying, what it's about. And I think that Doom, so Doom is supposed to be this Atlantis, this guy from Atlantis that is like so much older than everybody there. He's a different being. At least that's like what in some of the research and stuff that I read, and Joseph sent me the director's commentary, and Milius was talking about that he is not necessarily human, that he's older than humanity, like he comes from Atlantis, he's part of this thing. But I feel when he describes the riddle of the steel and the paradox of the steel, to me, that's what resonates, and that's what ultimately the movie's about. Because in the beginning, when they're forging the sword and building the sword, Arnold Schwarzenegger is the human representation of that hardening. And I think, it's one of the things that struck me when I watched this is, and why I loved it so much, and I love these movies like this so much, is I think it was written for us, for young males in particular at a certain age. I mean, because there's a certain kind of machismo that you watch it and it just really like resonates with you, and it's so, in the philosophy in it, and it's so harsh and kind of brutal, and you're like, this is the path to get hard. This is the path.
It's Conan. So the movie Conan is John Milius. We talk about himself mythologizing. It is the mythology of the Nietzschean Superman, right? It is the mythology of the self-reliant Superman, right? And all that shit is bullshit, but there is a real appeal to the mythology of that, especially for boys. This idea that you can become this self-reliant Superman, that you no gods, no kings, I'm my own thing, and I have the power to move through the world freely, and nobody can tell me what to do.
Right.
And that really is what the movie Conan is. John Milius mythologizing that idea.
What's interesting is the first time I've heard that Nietzsche quote, "What doesn't kill you makes you stronger," at the beginning, when I was a kid and I first saw this movie, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, oh yeah, what doesn't kill, it just really struck a chord with me. And because we were just at that age when you start going to the playground and you start realizing like, oh, if I'm not the toughest kid on the playground, I'm vulnerable to the other tough kids on the playground. Right. So you're trying to find the law of the jungle and the law of the kingdom, and then you see these movies where it's like, oh, here's the answer. You need to be a pit fighter for a few years, and then you need to develop your skills, and then you go get your own sword, and then you have to have, what Doom says to him at the end is like, I gave you hate, which that gives you a purpose, that gives you a meaning. Then you're like, now I got to find my hate, so then I can have a purpose and a meaning that I can define myself by. That gives me, so really, you don't realize you're on the wrong path.
Yeah. Look at the strength of your body, the desire in your heart. I gave you this.
Exactly. And I think you made a good point. By the way, there was some hot shit actors in this. And we love these movies at this time, and watching it now with perspective and as I'm older is like, it was extremely well shot. It was it's
a beautiful movie.
It's a beautiful movie. The cinematography, they should have been nominated for that. It's just so far above all the other movies of its ilk. And I wasn't as aware until you go back and watch it. It's about something, and it has a philosophy underneath it.
His dad, who gets 5 minutes of screen time, is played by William Smith.
Yes.
Great character actor from the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Been in a ton of stuff, and he's in it for 5 minutes. I mean, obviously, you got Darth Vader as Thulsa Doom. Amazing. But my favorite part, talking about the acting, my favorite part is that Milius hired a bunch of non-actors to play very important parts. The guy who plays Subutai he was a surfer.
Surfer, yeah.
Yeah, and he's awesome as Subutai. Yeah. He's my favorite character in the whole movie. The actor that they brought in to play Valerian, she had never acted before. She was a dancer.
She was in All That Jazz. That was the first.
You're right.
Yeah,
she was in All That Jazz. But she was in it because she was a dancer.
Yeah.
Right. And what he was looking for was that sort of leonine strength that dancers have.
And it paid off dividends because she had the best graceful movements within the whole movie. You know, what I love is like in the early, as a kid, there's a great example of fight consistency is you go watch this movie. And so the way that Milius constructs, like even the evolution of the pit fighting, right? He has a great sense of fight consistency. So when Conan first goes in the pit, he doesn't know what's going on. He's almost innocent. It's almost like he's like a boy. Yep. And his violence is like so brutal and raw, and it's just childlike, like he's just surviving.
Well, the only reason he survives is because he's so strong.
Right.
Because he doesn't know any moves. He doesn't have any technique.
Well, physically strong, but also the grit in the spirit, because that is what that grinding will signified, is that these boys all started off, there was like everything had two of them. And as time progressed, they started dying. Milius said he wanted like the bones of the hands to still be in the handcuffs, and so that means he would be dragging the dead bodies around. And and that's what the guy that bought him is. He saw this like grit and this desire to live and this will and this iron will inside of him, which embodies the message of the movie. So he puts him in the pit fighting. And it was that grit and that will and that physical strength that he saw. But as he progressed as a fighter, his technique progressed.
Right.
And then he
gets better and better.
He gets better. And then it gets more sophisticated. It gets more skillful. It gets more. And
when he goes out east to learn from the great war masters, that's when he gets his real sword skills, right? He starts learning how to really sword fight.
Yes. And so, you know, what a bad movie would have done, or a lot of these movies do, is they drop him in the pit. And he fights that first fight as if it's his last fight in the movie. And there's just it's just like, okay, here's a fight. It's almost like a different director directs the fight scenes, you know, that's not connected to the spirit of the story and the flow and the engine of the story.
Settle this for me, Wes. I have always thought that the guy who buys him off of the wheel is the redheaded kid that connects him to the wheel at the beginning. When he first gets connected to the wheel when he's a kid, there's another kid sitting on top of the arm that he's connected to. When they hook him up, that whacks his hands with a little switch to get him to put his hands on and start pushing. And he's got the same red hair as the guy who shows up later to buy him. And I'm always like, I think it's that guy. I think that kid, the one who first was hitting him with the switch to get him to push the wheel, comes back later as an adult. The guy is still alive. And he's like, oh, I got to buy that one. Because I was there when he got hooked up, and that guy's still alive. He's a badass.
I think that's an interesting, I think that's the most interesting choice to make out of that. I just listened to the director's commentary, and he kind of had a bit of a different take about that. But I think that makes the most sense, and it's also resonates the most with me because ultimately that guy sets him free.
Yep.
So if he was the kid that, you know, basically was a part of him being enslaved and watched him grow and watched him conquer and endure and go through this thing, that he would have, there's a morality that would wake inside of him. I've prospered so much for this poor soul, and he's lived his whole life. Now that he's still young enough to do something, I need to let him go.
Yeah.
And and that's the thing, is like the movie is so brutal and so barbaric. That moment of kindness of letting him free resonates so deeply because you're just not used to seeing it in this world. And then even Arnold doesn't know it's the White Fang scene. You remember that we always talk about?
He doesn't know what he's supposed to do now.
He doesn't know what he's
thinks
supposed
he's in
to do.
trouble.
Yeah. You know,
it's like, why are you mad at me?
Yeah. What, did I do something wrong? And it's like he spent his whole life as a slave. And then symbolically, he gets thrown to the wolves. And like his first challenge is to face the wolves. It's kind of like the Spartan culture where they will send the young boys like into graduating into manhood. They would send them out into the wilderness. They had to survive naked for 3 days alone.
So in a lesser writer and a lesser director's hands, that scene would be soppy and sentimental, but it's not. This is John Milius's Conan. There's no sentiment in it. When he lets him go, he's clearly drunk. He doesn't unlock the chains. He chops the chains in half with a fucking axe and lets Conan run off with dragging half a chain behind him, right? There's no sentiment in there. It's a moment. It is a moment of humanity that this redheaded guy experiences. He gets really drunk. He has this moment of guilt where he's like, fuck, I've been enslaving this guy his entire life. I should let him go. And he drunkenly goes outside and chops the chain with an axe. That is a perfect explanation in microcosm of what makes this movie different than all the other movies like it.
And you notice that Conan never feels sorry for himself?
Never.
He never feels sorry for himself. And so then when he's stuck up on the rocks and the wolf is there and he falls in the thing, and there's something about watching this, like he progresses and he grows as a man throughout this thing, but he never feels sorry for himself. And I love how everything in this story is so well thought out and it all makes sense within this universe. So even I went online and to read about the god Chrome and understand. And then the first thing it says Chrome disdains worship and is offended by flattery. And it's that is a god in this universe that I totally see being there.
And you understand why the barbaric tribes of the North are Crom followers, because Crom doesn't want your fucking worship. He doesn't give a shit.
One thing that this movie does different than other sword and sandal movies that I think is really interesting is that they have Conan be drunken and kind of be lost. And, there was a moment when he punches the camel, there's a sense of humor. There's a moment there where it's he's unheroic, like him passing out in the soup.
Conan is not a hero.
He's not exactly.
Conan is a thief.
Right.
The thing that drives him through the plot is not any sense of trying to save people. It is getting revenge for the death of his parents. That is what drives him through the story. Now, he accidentally saves a bunch of people by taking his revenge, but that was never his goal. He's not there to save all those. He thinks those worshipers are idiots. He's not there to save them. He didn't give a fuck about them, right? He's there to kill Thulsa Doom.
In the movies that came after this, all the Conans of the movies were extremely honorable, extremely moral, and they were heroic in all ways, and they didn't show these sort of things. And that storyline is omnipresent through a lot of these, and we'll go talk about them at the end, and I'll tell you what my favorite one other than Conan is, which I think we're going to disagree on. But that story of being raised in a village and then of a force coming and destroying that village, and you're the last survivor.
Yeah.
And then your motivation through the movie is to go get revenge on the people that murdered your family.
Yep.
What I love about Conan is you understand where his skills came from, right? And it was methodically developed, right? And so you understand why he's the baddest warrior on the plane. You understand they even went in for his intellectual development. They showed him reading and studying and reading the scrolls.
The poetry of Kitai, the philosophy of Sung. Dude, I realized I was talking to Janae earlier as I was making coffee, and I was quoting Conan, and I was like, I think I can quote that entire movie. I think I can quote the entire movie. Like I did the entire intro for her as I was making coffee. Fire and wind come from the sky. And from the gods of the sky. But Crom is your god, Conan, and he lives in the earth. And in the darkness of chaos, and giants also lived in the earth. And in the darkness of chaos, they fooled Crom, and they took from him the enigma of steel. And Crom was angered, and the earth shook, and fire and wind struck down the giants, and they tossed their bodies into the waters. But in their anger, the gods forgot the enigma of steel, and they left it on the battlefield. And we who found it are just men, not gods, not giants. Just men.
You know what? We're going to do a one-man show, and Ty is going to come on, and he's just going to quote Conan the whole time. That'll be his thing and everything. What was I talking about?
Well, you were talking about the developed world and the methodical nature in which Conan develops his skills, including his intellectual skills.
But when he is set free and as he develops, he's not thinking about the revenge. He's motivated with now I got to survive. So how do I survive? I need money, and women. And so he goes off and he's his evolution as a human being now starts to happen to where then he starts to realize he even goes beyond the need for revenge. So it's this beautiful journey, and it's a complete journey. Whereas most of these movies, they kill their father, they kill the mother, and then he's like, okay, fully formed. Like he's a fully formed fighter. He's a fully formed, honorable, moral man, and he's a hero, and he knows what his mission is, and he's got to go accomplish and kill this thing. And the movie's over when he kills the person. And this one is way more complex and sophisticated.
And there is an element of random chance. Now, Conan never forgets his desire for revenge through the entire movie. And the movie constantly reminds us that Conan wants to find Thulsa and kill him.
So sorry to interrupt. But I want you to clarify that one point before we move on for the point. For me, when do you in the movie are aware that he's aware that it's time to go that he needs to get his revenge?
He brings it up to the witch that he's looking for the standard. Yeah. He brings it up to Subutai. He mentions the snakes, and Subutai says the only snakes he knows of are Thulsa and his cult.
Yeah.
They go to the city, and you see Arnold he's not flexing. He's doing the standard of the two snakes facing each other.
Yeah.
Right. So all through, they're dropping hints that Conan has never forgotten that this is what he wants to do. But that's kind of in the background because it's not a thing he can do yet. And while that's in the background, he hooks up with Subutai, and Subutai is a thief. And Subutai just co-opts Conan into his thieving schemes. Right. So when they go to the first tower, the first one of the Tower of Set, they go there not to get revenge. Conan goes there to see if it's where Thulsa is. Subutai goes there to rob it, and Conan is also robbing it, and that's where they wind up with they kill the snake and they take the giant gem, and they have all the other gems, and they wind up getting very rich, and that's where they first meet Valerian, because she's there to rob it too. I guess what I'm doing is a long way of agreeing with you that Conan doesn't drop into this world with every element of his plan already in place. He's sort of learning things as he goes. He learns how to be a thief by hanging out with Subutai, which then becomes part of how he gets his revenge later. He gains these two friends who become his partners in getting that revenge when he first starts partnering with Subutai, and then later when they meet Valerian, and Valerian comes with them on that first robbery and winds up getting rich off of it. And so she stays with them. It's exactly what you're saying. All these other movies, the failure that they make is they take the character, and like you said, his parents are killed and he's instantly fully formed. He has all of the skills that he needs. He has all of the friends that he needs. He goes off on his revenge quest, and then it's just watching a person go through a series of set pieces to get to the final boss fight, right? It's like watching a video game. Whereas with Conan, he's given this desire for revenge, and then he's dropped into a world that's not like he's not just going to walk through this world. He's got to find things. He's got to collect friends. He's got to get new skills. He's got to find the things that he's looking for. And so it feels much more sort of accidental in some elements that he gets the things that he needs to get the revenge that he gets, without ever having lost the desire for that.
I love when they get rich, when it makes them soft and drunken and foolish, and there's a pitfall in when they get rich. And so, first of all, he makes missteps. He goes down wrong roads. And so they get rich, and he's drunken, he's eating, he's devouring. And so then when was it Max von Sydow?
It was Max von Sydow. Yeah.
Max von Sydow, when his soldiers come to get him, they can't even defend themselves. He's face down in soup, right? Yep. And what's great is the director commentary, the studio was like, cut this shit. What is, and what he was saying is no, he made a misstep. These are the consequences, and he needs to be awakened again. And this is where he is, and this is where, they can't even, Valerian is a bad motherfucker in the whole movie, but because they've been just drinking and banging for however long, she can't even, she's too drunk to even defend herself when they come and get her. Yep. And so Max von Sydow gives them, by the way, talk about another fantastic actor. Max von Sydow just can class up the joint. He comes in.
He has one scene, and he's fucking great.
And he's fucking incredible. It brings tears to your eyes. Yeah. It's like,
is there a dagger such as this in her hand for me? And then he throws it and sticks it in the table, and you're just like, God damn. Well, I mean, he was once a powerful Norseman like Conan, but now he was old and sodded.
This is the only movie I've heard you quote like this before. This is hilarious. What was the the movie where the football player goes into the alternate universe. Queen does the soundtrack.
You're talking about
Flash Gordon.
Yeah, you're talking about Flash Gordon.
Okay, Flash Gordon. Max von Sydow comes in and classes that movie up. He's
as
so
Ming
good
the
in that.
Merciless.
Yeah, as Ming the Merciless, and he comes in, and you're like, Jesus Christ! Like he's the type of actor. So there's always that debate of like, is an actor that works, or is an actor like pick and choose his things and like will only work with Scorsese or something?
Right.
He's the kind of actor. No matter what he does, he's going to be phenomenal, and he's going to elevate it.
Yeah, your shitty movie doesn't drag him down. He drags your shitty movie up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so having James Earl Jones, having Max von Sydow, and having John Milius write and direct this, and having the charisma,
just classes the joint up, man.
And having the charisma of a young Arnold Schwarzenegger, it is why they started making these movies for a full decade, and they were all derivative of a derivative of a derivative. And if John Milius would have been a weaker director, he would have took those nuts and cut the Conan being drunk and foolish and all those things. He would have cut all that out. They even want him to cut the punching the camel. They cut that out.
That's so dumb. It totally sounds like a studio note to me. It's so dumb. It is such a misunderstanding of what a scene like that does. It is such a misunderstanding of the movie that is being made. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all that Milius got those notes. But the other thing that Milius did, and on that topic of actors, since we're talking actors right now, is Milius understood the strength of what he had, because he had Arnold Schwarzenegger, who obviously is a physical specimen. I mean, this is Arnold, like, not that far away from his Mr. Universe titles, right? He's still just a fucking specimen at this point. And he's got enormous physical gifts. Like the way he moves his body, he's very careful with the movement of his body. Because obviously when you're at that level of bodybuilding, posing is such a part of it, right? Like how you pose and all those things, and how your body presents to the audience, or in this case, the camera. He's a physically gifted actor, but he cannot deliver a line. And Milius understood that. And Milius said, you know what we're going to do? We're going to cut this thing down to the fucking minimum. We're going to have Arnold reply to things by looking, not by talking, not by delivering lines, but just by moving his body a little bit and looking at the person who spoke to him. And that's how he's going to deliver his dialogue. And it was such a good choice, because there's like great scenes where a lesser writer director would have given Conan a line, and Milius just gives him a move, just gives him a look, a twisting of the body to look a different direction. And it makes the scene so much better, because Arnold can do that. That's a thing Arnold can do. And his charisma comes through in those moments. So he knew what he had, and he worked with what he had. And because of that, he made Arnold a fucking rock star after this.
Arnold doesn't say a word until what is best in life.
Yep.
That's the first thing he says.
Yep.
And that's like 20 minutes in, 30 minutes in. And the thing that you're exactly right. The thing that Milius understood is that there's a lot of different talents one can have when it comes to performance. And he understands what Arnold's talent is.
Yep.
And what Arnold did throughout his career is he put his talents up front, and then brought up his weaker talents. He just worked at him as time went on.
Yeah, he worked to become a better actor. And he did. But this early in his career, he didn't have a lot of verbal acting chops yet. And Milius knew that.
In casting Valerian, the way that she moved is hypnotized. Like the way that she hops over the thing, that she climbs the rope, and that in this is most important. And anytime he needed somebody to carry some real weight with exposition or do something, then he had Max von Sydow, or he had James Earl Jones, or he had these real heavyweights. So it was either like, I'm hiring a dancer and a bodybuilder or this, or I'm hiring one of the greatest actors ever lived.
To give full credit where credit is due, Jerry Lopez, who is not an actor, he was a surfer, he was a professional surfer, delivers a lot of dialogue in this movie. He delivers a lot of the dialogue that normally would have been given to Conan. Subotai says it instead. and Jerry Lopez knocks it out of the fucking park. I was shocked Jerry Lopez didn't get a bunch more acting jobs after this because he's great.
Did he do it all? Did he act at all after this?
You didn't see him in much.
He probably didn't care. And
he did. I mean,
if he was ambitious towards it, he probably could have worked after this because he has a great presence on screen.
He has a fantastic presence, and again, Jerry Lopez is not a big guy, right? And so they play. Conan is sort of this beast in the middle, but you've got a very sort of small, agile guy playing Subutai, which makes sense because he's the thief, he's the archer, he's not like a big burly sword man, although he does okay with the sword in the movie. And then you've got Valerian, who they play her like you talk about fight consistency. She never wins a sword fight by overpowering her opponents. Every time she wins a sword fight in this movie, she wins it by being quicker than them. Like she's just lightning fast and very hard to hit, right? And so that's how she wins the fights. Whereas when Conan fights, he just powers through you.
Yeah.
You hold your sword up to block, he just chops through that sword.
Right.
You never see Valerian doing that shit. She's like a snake. She's so fast.
He literally chops through somebody's sword.
He literally chops through a sword.
He literally cuts the guy's sword off.
Or picks up like a 4,000 pound thing of soup and throws it at you.
By the way, the buzzard that he grabs, that he bites and kills. That was a real buzzard.
No, it wasn't.
Yes, in the director's. Well, they say it is in the director's commentary.
Really?
And what it is they had the buzzard was like half alive and half dead, and they put it on Arnold's shoulder just to have some. I'm sure they cut in some fake stuff, but there was an actual real buzzard in Arnold's mouth at some point. And this is what they say in the commentary. And Arnold was saying, and they both were like, that buzzard was filthy. They said it had mites on it and everything like that, and it was on its shoulder and everything. And he put it in his mouth, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I couldn't imagine doing that. And he grabbed it and ripped it around and threw the buzzard down.
Now, and what's interesting about Arnold as Conan? Now, I love Conan the Barbarian. It's one of my favorite movies. So this is not me bashing Conan at all, but Arnold is not Conan. He's not the Conan from the books. What Arnold is the Conan from the Franck Frazetta covers for those books. So Franck Frazetta did a bunch of covers for Conan, and he always painted Conan as this huge, muscly, like sort of massive figure, right? But if you read the books about Conan, Conan is not like that. He's described as being lithe and panther-like. He's much more like the male version of Valerian than he is Conan in the books. He's an incredibly powerful sword fighter and all of those things. He's a dangerous guy, but he's not like a beast. He's not like a huge muscly guy. But Franck Frazetta would always paint him that way. And that became people's mental image of what Conan looked like because the Frazetta covers are so iconic. So when Milius was casting, he definitely was casting the cover version of Conan, not the book version of Conan. When Jason Momoa did a Conan reboot a few years ago, which was unfortunately not very good because I really like Jason, but it's not a good movie. But when the trailer for it came out, I was still working for George Martin at the time, and we watched the trailer, and George was like, yeah, that's what, because it wasn't the super jacked version, although Jason Momoa is a beast, but Jason Momoa has more of kind of that long panther-like kind of look to him. And he's like, that's much more the book version of Conan than the Arnold version was. And I agree.
I was unaware of how complex and intricate and well done and well shot and well directed and acted that Conan was until now that I watched it as older. So, and also my knowledge of Conan is incomplete because what I think of Conan was the Superstation cut of Conan.
Which I have seen many times. And boy, right. When you watch the actual unrated director's cut version, it's like, whoa, I can see why this got cut.
I tried to show it to my kids. I lasted 5 minutes.
That was a mistake.
I lasted 5 minutes. I was like, I can't show this to them. I mean, it's like, I was like, well, because I think the whole Wolf Witch is cut out in the Superstation. I think so. Oh, wait, no. Did we debate this one? Oh, it is? Okay, she is, yeah.
So if you watch the Superstation version, which I have watched many times, Conan walks up. You see her hut in the distance, and then it just cuts to he's talking to Subutai. And Subutai says, food, give me food, so that I may, die not of hunger, but in combat. So it just cuts directly to that. She's just gone. Her hut is there.
Yeah.
You see the hut. But when he walks up in the actual cut, when he walks up, the hut is there. And then the curtain gets thrown aside and she comes out and starts talking to him. It cuts right when you see the hut before she pulls the curtain up. And it cuts straight to him talking to Subutai.
What a bad cut. Because then you're like, who is that? And where did she go? Yeah, where did that go? And who is this guy? What's hilarious? So
he's
Jerry
Subutai,
Lopez,
thief and archer. He's Arcanian of the Great Order of Kurlit.
You know what I love is like when Jerry Lopez tells him about the 4 winds that he worships.
Yeah.
And Arnold has a moment of like, oh shit.
He's like, my God is the everlasting sky. Your God dwells beneath him. But that's one of those scenes I'm talking about where a lesser script would have given Conan a line, but they don't. They just have Conan turn and look. Like he just looks at, he's got that piece of chicken he's holding and he just turns and looks. And it's that moment of like, Conan's first reaction is, fuck you for talking shit about Crom. Secondly, oh yeah, you're right.
You got a point there. Jerry Lopez, when he's like, wolf food, when he's there.
What are you doing here? Dinner for wolves. Yeah.
But listen, that is hard to teach where the comedy comes from the point of view as opposed to trying to be funny. And so like so many people would have tried to make a meal out of that line, but he just answers
He just holds up his chain and goes, dinner for wolves. Which makes it awesome.
Yeah.
It's a great scene. And then when they cut to the two of them are eating together and they're having a conversation about who their gods are and that kind of stuff. And it, without dragging the scene out, because that's a quick scene. It's very short, but you get the sense that these guys have been sharing with each other their pasts and their philosophies and all of that stuff. And we just get that one snippet where they talk about their gods. But when later that shows them running together, like I get why they're together. He saved Subutai's life. They ate dinner together. They had a conversation about their shared philosophy and experience of the world. Next thing we know, they're running into a city to do some robbing.
I love like their version of like hopping into the Pathfinder and drive. Like they're just fucking just running.
They're just running.
There's just shots of them just like in those days. Like Jesus Christ, get a horse, guys. Like they're just fucking hauling ass through the Great Plains.
Well, they're both broke.
I know.
They have nothing.
Yeah. That's the point.
Subutai was chained up to a wall. Conan just escaped from some wolves. They have nothing. When it shows them running, it's like, yeah, of course, that's how you have to get somewhere, right?
That's another example of great storytelling. So when Conan is chased with the wolves and he goes in the cave and he finds his sword and finds his things and he comes out and you see the wolves wake up and they're waiting for him and you just see him have this look and cut to the next scene, he's wearing the wolf skins.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic storytelling because it's like, fantastic. Oh, I guess I know what happened to those wolves.
Yeah, I guess now he's got clothes.
I bet he had more than one dinner of wolf meat too.
So Milius in the director's commentary, he talks about when they were resurrecting Conan, he goes into detail about this whole ritual and what is happening. And the reason they write on the face is I think that a lot of these movies will just put in like, okay, we'll have some kind of ritual here and you can do this. And there's no reason or meaning or purpose behind it.
Yep.
If you're going to do a ritual, you need to know why you're doing that ritual. You need to know why it ties into the whole, what the story is saying. And it needs to be very specific. But ultimately he's writing these ancient writings. So anything on Conan that's exposed, when the demons come, the demons can take that thing. So if it's his hand or his nose or anything, so they put these spiritual writings all over, so the demons they can't bypass that writing and take him and take those things.
The other thing that they do that I really like is they circle every injury that he had. So like you see where he was nailed to the tree, there's circles around the injuries. There's circles wherever he was hurt. There's a circle around it. Like it's like that's what they're trying to fix with the ritual. That's what they're trying to heal. Right?
Why didn't they resurrect Valorian the same way?
I don't think they're actually resurrecting. I think he is on death's door, and they know that he's going to die, and the spirits are going to come for his soul. So they're protecting him so that when the spirits come to take his soul, when he finally expires, they can hold him off and they can heal the injuries. Right?
Yeah.
Valerian's just dead.
Yeah.
Like it's too late. It's too late to fix her.
So you can, one of the things, and I don't know how I didn't notice this before. I didn't know that they were eating people.
Oh,
I didn't know.
Yeah, you
I
see
don't know.
hands and stuff.
Did they cut this out in the Superstation?
I think they may have. They didn't completely cut it out, because there's, in the Superstation version, there's a shot where the big mutant dude with the big ladle is scooping up soup and dripping it, and you see the hand fall out of the ladle back into the soup, even in the Superstation cut.
I might have seen that, but when I was watching it this time, I was like, "Are those fucking people hanging like their carcasses?"
Well, they cut that out. Like, the corpses hanging in the background. I think that got cut out. Yeah.
And then I was like, "Wait a minute." And so what's really funny is, like Milius at the time, he came out of the 60s, out of the 70s, and he hated hippies. And so like this was like because even in the commentary they do it and he goes, "Hippies," and it's like he's basically like portraying hippies as the mindless people that are lining up to get eaten by the snake, by the serpent. That's like what he did there and everything. And they kind of had that flower child kind of thing to it. So, he was a bit heavy handed in how he thought about that.
Yeah. He was also a little, as much as I admire Milius's movies, there's some homophobia in there. There's some misogyny. There's, Milius may not be as right of Attila the Hun as the story is, but he's still pretty. He's still got some blind spots in his social awareness.
Yeah, I kind of
the gay priest that gets beat up by Conan is. I cringe a little bit when I see that now.
Yeah, that's rough to watch, and I kind of I didn't mention. I kind of jumped over that one because it's a bit. There's a few,
but it
things.
Does have one of my favorite lines, like, "Why are you ashamed of your body? You're so big and well grown." Should be proud of your body.
Yeah, I don't know why he had to. I mean, I think he would have gave him the robe if he asked for it.
I think he probably would have.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know why he had to. Poor guy. He didn't have to beat him up. Oh, and here's another question. So, when did they become aware that Conan was a spy? Is it when he showed his credentials?
It's when he gives. It's when he gives the jade symbol to the guard, because that, if you remember, that symbol was stolen from the Tower of Set when they killed the big snake.
Oh. So
I'm sure they knew that was a stolen thing. And so when he's showing it to everybody and he hands it to the guy takes it over to the two, one played by a football player and the other one played by a bodybuilder, who are Thulsa Doom's main guys. Rexor was the high priest at the temple of Set, or the Tower of Set, where the thing got stolen from. So when the guard takes it and shows it to those guys, of course they know where it came from. So yeah, all of this that we've talked about leads up to, obviously we talked about the fact that Valerian is killed. She is also killed by Thulsa Doom. So now Thulsa Doom has killed 3 of the most important people in Conan's life. And so he needs to get him some revenge. And he and Subutai set up for a last stand against the hordes of Thulsa Doom, against Thorgrim and Rexor, his 2 lieutenants, and a bunch of faceless guards. They're all going to come charging over. They know where Conan is. They know where he's going to be set up. And they're just going to come kill him. And so he and Subutai prepare this mound, this burial mound, as the fortress for their last stand. And that leads up to one of the greatest long battle sequences ever in fantasy film. Like, yes, Lord of the Rings was an amazing accomplishment. I love Lord of the Rings, but there is no battle in all of Lord of the Rings, as much as I love those movies, that is as gritty and visceral and intense as that last fight. Because this is 2 guys who expect to die. Like they're like, this is a last stand, right? They're expecting to get killed in this fight. But the way that the 2 of them work together to overcome the greater odds, the greater force attacking them, is one of my favorite sequences in all of film. And it is led up to by the greatest dialogue that Arnold gets in the entire movie, when he finally prays to Crom. That final prayer to Crom is the greatest prayer in the history of cinema. Yeah. So
giving us the other ones. I want it.
do you want me to? I mean, I can. Obviously, I can.
Of course.
I've never prayed to you before, Crom. I have no tongue for it.
Keep going.
No one will remember if we were good men or bad, why we fought or why we died. All that matters is that two stood against many. And I know Battle Lord pleases you, Crom. So grant me one request. Grant me revenge. And if you do not listen, then to hell with you. Yep.
You know that inspired the Major League. Then I say, fuck you, Jobu.
That's right. It totally did.
It definitely did.
And by the way, Crom was listening because Conan got his revenge.
Alrighty, so we're going to be moving first to the what the Tying That Guy patrons would like to know. Alrighty, first Amber asks, I would like to say, Ty, would you consider this a perfect movie?
No, it has one big mistake in it, and it makes me cringe every time I see this. But I give it a pass because very few movies can hit 100%.
Okay.
But it's a solid 99, 98%.
Okay. Well, her question is, how do you feel about the text crawl at the end of the movie?
I don't care about that.
Okay.
I don't care about text crawls at the end.
Okay. If it's at the beginning, then that pisses you off.
I don't think it's a perfect movie. I think it's the best sword and sandal movie I've ever seen.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, for sure.
But I think that, and I think Ty will disagree with me, and I definitely disagree with all the studio notes, but I do think it meanders a bit at certain times. And I don't think that there's nothing, like, everything has a reason, everything has a purpose, but I do think things could move along faster. Like, I don't need the wolf witch crawling around for 5 minutes before they get to the point of the scene.
But definitely, please do not cut Dennis Skotak. Or no, it wasn't Dennis Skotak. It was who's the other production designer? So the production designer for the movie, whose name I know and has just flown out of my head, Ron Kopp.
Oh yeah, he's in the movie.
He's in the movie. He's the Black Lotus dealer. Stygian, the best. This better not be Haga. I would sell Haga to a slayer such as you.
Alrighty. All right. Choggle asks for both. How long, realistically, do you think you could rotate that stupid wheel?
Oh, I'd be dead in the first day. Conan would be dragging my corpse. I'd just be hanging there. I'd just be hanging there on the wheel as Conan pushed it.
You know what I love too about the will is, so the beginning of the will, there was 2 kids for each side, and it's fucking brutal. And then each montage is freezing, and they're fucking. And at the end,
fewer and fewer.
Yeah, and it's fewer and fewer. And at the end, it's just Arnold, and he's pushing the thing, and it's like he's daydreaming as he's it's like so simple. So it's only one man pushing the thing, and it's like it's not even he's mastered it. It's like there's not even any resistance to it. He's just pushing it around.
And you see he's using the same, like he's putting his feet in the same footsteps as he did the first time around. Like he's using his previous footstep to give himself leverage. So I would not be the guy pushing the wheel. I'd be the redheaded kid slapping people's hands with the switch to make them go faster.
Alrighty, Tony asks, what would be your favorite Conan crossover movie, like Freddy versus Jason's or Aliens versus Predator?
I hate crossover movies. I hate them with a passion. They're all fucking terrible, and I don't know why people are always saying, "Hey, we should do a crossover." They're all terrible.
They already kind of did a crossover movie called Red Sonja,
and it's terrible. It's terrible.
And Conan isn't Conan in Red. It's Arnold Schwarzenegger wearing Conan's clothes, but he's not Conan in the movie.
Yeah, he's like Prince something. Yeah, it's bullshit. It's complete bullshit.
It was pretty bad. Alrighty, our last question will be by Will Barger, who should be joining us in any second.
What's up, Will?
Hey guys, how are y'all?
I'm good. How you doing?
Doing okay.
Where you zooming in from?
From northwestern Arkansas.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah. Around Fayetteville, the U of A.
Are you going?
Go Hogs.
Do you go duck hunting?
I have before. I never enjoyed it. It's too early and too cold for me.
Thank you. But thank you for being a reasonable person.
Yeah. I got lots of buddies that do it, though.
Yeah.
My question is, with Arnold's, advanced age, do you think he could still do a King Conan movie? And if so, Joe wanted to know about this. Would he use like a CGI bodysuit or like the new Indiana Jones, youth serum, whatever they did?
If they're gonna do King Conan with Arnold, then you got to double down on what he is. You got to do old as fuck King Conan with Arnold the way he looks now. No, none of the CGI bullshit. Just old as fuck Arnold playing old as fuck Conan as his kingdom is slipping away from him. And then what you're playing is you're playing the Unforgiven version of Conan, where he gets to the end of his life and he realizes the futility of the violence that he lived, the futility of the things he gained through violence. And we see him as the echo of the Max von Sydow character from Conan the Barbarian.
Yes.
The guy who has reached the end and realizes that the Max von Sydow character was right.
Would the dagger come back?
I don't know if the dagger comes back, but I think that is an interesting version of King Conan.
But to echo what Ty said, I would like to see to bookend Arnold giving the dagger and the Max von Sydow speech, and learning what he learned throughout the whole process of the thing.
Do you think Arnold could pull off like a little more dialogue, or would it need to be like
Arnold's
he
a better
really
actor than he was? No, Arnold's a better actor now. He as Wes said, we all make fun of the caricature version of Arnold, but the reality is he's a smart man and he worked hard. Like he's wanted to be,
for a reason.
He wanted to be good. He wanted to be an actor. He worked hard at it and he got better. I don't think he ever became, Olivier, but he became good enough to deliver believable dialogue and he's done some stuff that he's
oozes
good.
Charisma.
And he oozes charisma.
Yeah.
Well, now he oozes life experience as well. Like he's been through a lot since the first Conan, and he's had a lot of life experience, and that will bleed through. That will be more interesting. So like
Absolutely.
The years and years of experience as an actor, and then the years and years of life experience of the things, the ups and downs and the pains and the things that he's been through, that will all bleed through. Did you see the Arnold documentary?
Not the new one, no. I haven't had a chance.
It's interesting because you go back and watch Pumping Iron at the beginning of who he is and like full of ego, full of testosterone. And then now he's kind of the grizzled version of that guy. And he's like exercised the politician in him, the need to be liked in that sense and everything. And now he's like, there's a moment when he's talking about, one of my favorite parts in the documentary is he's talking about Hollywood and how he said, I went to Hollywood and I was trying to make it as an actor because he struggled for a while. Like when he was trying to make that transition, he was struggling. Him and Franco were like laying bricks. They were buying real estate. They were doing whatever they could to survive. And they kept telling him, you need to lean down. You need to lose your accent. You need to do this and everything like that. And he said, what ended up happening is like, and then Pumping Iron is like one of the things that like reawakened or opened the doors for his career. But he goes, what ended up happening is me holding on to who I was and the honest and authenticity, telling the truth about myself is what got me working. And so when I kept trying to be something else and all this, but then when I started embracing that and working off of that, that's what got me working. And he goes, so all these people that were telling me to do this, he goes, fuck them all.
I love the man.
Yeah.
He's just an amazing story.
All right. Thank you for coming by. Joseph is saying we got to boot you so we can do the rest. But thanks, man. Thanks for coming by. Thanks for the question. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
So we're doing a top 5. I'm going to just say right now of sword and sorcery, I do not consider Lord of the Rings a sword and sorcery film. It is a different kind of thing for me. But way up at the top of this list with Conan, for me, is Dragon Slayer. Dragon Slayer is one of my favorite movies ever. And I still think it is the best on-screen dragon ever. Like we've had fancy CGI dragons. You had Desolation of Smaug recently. You've had all the dragons on Game of Thrones. Vermithrax from Dragon Slayer is still the best dragon ever.
Such a good movie. Unbelievable that it's a Disney movie.
And I know for Wes, can I just guess where Wes is going? Wes is going with Beastmaster.
Yeah. Yeah. I was wondering if we were going to have some conflict in this, but And again, Beastmaster is definitely a derivative of Conan, but it's the best of the derivatives.
It's the best one for sure. Yeah. I agree with that.
This is tough because I forgot about Willow. I forgot about Legend, Lady Hawk, Kroll, Highlander. Is Highlander?
I mean, I'm going to go ahead and say that pretty much every movie on this list is a movie I will watch.
Would you consider Highlander Sword and Sandal?
I do not.
Okay.
No.
Thank God.
No, I would not consider it Highlander. But like, I still like Clash of the Titans. I thought the Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves, I thought that was a really good movie. I laughed my ass off at that movie. I thought it was a lot of fun. Excalibur, I don't know if I would include it in this particular category, but I love Excalibur. It's slow and it's ponderous and it's very sort of full of its own importance, but it doesn't matter. It looks great. It has a fantastic soundtrack. By the way, can we speak real quick on the we didn't mention it, but the Conan soundtrack, the Basil Pallador soundtrack for Conan is one of the greatest movie scores of all time.
It's fantastic.
I can sit and listen to that score, just the score.
I can't believe we didn't talk about the score. I wouldn't put Excalibur on my top 5.
I do have to say, I have a huge, Megan was asking about terrible movies that we'll watch. I will watch Hawk the Slayer.
Hell yeah.
I wouldn't put it on the top 5, anywhere near the top 5, but I will watch me some Hawk the Slayer when it comes on.
You know, where are you on Kroll?
We've talked about Kroll. I love the fucked up weirdness of Kroll. Kroll is a mess of a movie, but it's fascinating. And it is not a Conan ripoff.
Yeah.
Which is a plus in its favor.
Yeah.
It is not a Conan ripoff. But I will say that my favorite of the Conan ripoffs is not on this list. It's The Sword and the Sorcerer. Oh, there it is, down at the bottom. I missed it because I wasn't looking down there.
I have a hardcore nostalgia boner for Lady Hawk.
I know.
I love Lady Hawk.
Lady Hawk is a beautiful movie that is saddled with one of the worst soundtracks of all time.
No, are you out of your mind? No, I'm kidding. It's a terrible soundtrack. But okay, so that would have been that's a great thing. That's a great topic. It's like a terrible soundtrack that you absolutely love. Like I love the soundtrack. Legend, gotta love the nostalgia for Legend. This is tough.
I picked mine. I picked Dragon Slayer. You picked Beastmaster. What would you go with next? Out of this list, if we're just doing straight sword and sorcery, I love me some sword and sorcerer.
I've never seen Sword and Sorcerer.
You haven't?
No.
Me and some of the patrons watched that yesterday. It was so much fun.
It's awesome.
Talon.
And it's one of those movies that ends with the promise that Talon will return, and then Talon never returns.
So what are we thinking? Kroll, Legend, Willow?
Okay, how about this? Would you take Kroll or Legend? We had to choose between one of those.
I think Kroll is a better example of the genre we're talking about. I think Legend is a beautiful, beautiful movie, but that I would not describe as a sword and sorcery movie.
It's more fairy tale.
It's a fairy tale.
Yeah.
It's a fairy tale.
Okay, so that's a good way to be decisive. Obviously, Red Sonja is out.
Yeah.
I really loved Willow.
I do not love Willow. I was a little too old the first time I watched it, and so it just seemed really silly to me. But the people who are your age, they all love the shit out of Willow.
If I considered Highlander a sword and sandal, I'd probably put that for the 5th. But since
it's not, and I don't think Excalibur is either.
So, and since
now Clash of the Titans, I think is. Now it hasn't been out long enough to be considered a classic, but I really like the Dungeons and Dragons movie. After the terribleness of the first one, I expected nothing from that movie, and it was incredibly charming.
My daughters really enjoyed that.
It's such a charming movie.
Can my kids watch it?
Yeah, 100%.
Oh, well, good.
They'd love it.
Yeah, I might watch it tonight.
Michelle Rodriguez in that movie is the first time that I have seen the Dungeons and Dragons version of a barbarian correctly portrayed on screen. Because you can, when you're watching that movie, if you're a D&D player, you know what I'm talking about. When you're watching that movie, you can literally see the moment when she's turning to the DM and going, "Oh, I'm gonna enrage now," and then just starts wrecking everyone around her. Like it is such a well done version of the D&D rule set version of a barbarian.
Now I'm going to ask you a question, Ty, and this is serious. So be as serious as possible. If we remade Die Hard and we took the pistol out of John McClane's hand and put a sword into his hand, where would that rank in sword and sandal movies? Like, imagine the movie, all the scenes, but he has a sword.
What I would say is that the last stand of Conan plus the sneaking through the caves to rescue what's the princess's name? I know she's played by Valerie Quennessen, the actress, who, by the way, Valerie Quennessen, the princess, was one of the two girls in Summer Lovers. If you're into Valerie Quennessen. But the sneaking through the caves to save the princess, followed up by the last stand, is basically Die Hard. He's sneaking through the vents, right? And then he has to do the last stand.
Do you want to read off the final?
Yeah. Conan the Barbarian, Dragon Slayer, Beastmaster, Sword and Sorcerer, Kroll, Dungeons and Dragons, Honor Among Thieves. Oh, you know what? I feel like we should have gave Lord of the Rings a little bit more love.
I love Lord of the Rings, but it is not a sword and sorcery movie.
That's right. Okay, Lord of the Rings, not a sword and sorcerer. Highlander, not a sword and sorcerer. Willow, Dungeons and Dragons Among Thieves. Lady Hawk. Honorable mention. Beastmaster.
Yeah, see, they know you.
Excalibur, Clash of the Titans.
They know you.
Yeah.
Wes, before we wrap it up, Wes, do you have time or do you got to run?
No, let's go.
Okay, I'm going to share this because I wanted to react from you guys on this, the Conan the musical. Okay,
that's a real agreement.
Another day, walking in circles, haunted by memories. I push this wheel. I pray to Kram, grant me revenge, and help me to answer the riddle of steel. A shy little boy couldn't protect them, helpless and timid, as weak as a girl.
As weak as a girl.
The dogs ate my father, my mother beheaded, took my whole world. Kram, where is the wizard who killed my mother? Still, I can recall his terrible gaze. Kram, where are the two snakes facing each other? Kram, if you're my god, then show me the way. I'm on the path, chopping up bodies, hacking and slicing, and look at me now. With loyal friends joining my party, each step I take, I'm fulfilling my vow. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women. Hear the lamentation of the women. Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentation of the women. Hear the lamentation of the women. Kram, show me the wizard who killed my mother. True, I've never prayed to you before. Still, what would I give if you could help me see this through? And if you do not listen, then the hell with you. Kram, where are the two snakes racing each other? Kram, if you're my god, then show me the way. I swear this wizard will fall, cause this has begun. They murdered them all. I'm the last one. I issued the call. Revenge for my mom. I pray to you, God. Crush your enemies. See them driven before you. And hear the lamentation of the women.
That's hilarious.
Pretty good.
Alrighty.
Thank you guys. This has been a fun day. on a couple podcasts. Thank you for hanging out. And remember the riddle of the steel. And then remember what's good in life. Tell them what's good in life, Ty.
Crush your enemies, see them driven before you, and hear the lamentations of the women. And this you can trust.